SpaceX launched its first Starlink internet satellites, NASA awarded a contract to build the first piece of the Lunar Gateway, and you can send your name to Mars. I'll tell you how on that last one, but first hit that like button as we get right into this week's Space Bulletin for May 25th, 2019.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
Launching into a clear Floridian night sky, SpaceX sent the first 60 spacecraft of its Starlink satellite internet constellation into orbit. Liftoff atop a Falcon 9 rocket took place at 2:30 UTC May 24th from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station's Space Launch Complex 40. Following a 9-minute ascent, 35-minute coast phase, and a 3-second final burn, the Starlink spacecraft were in their final deployment orbit of about 440 kilometers, inclined 53 degrees from the equator. All 60 Starlink satellites were released at the same time by putting the Falcon 9 second stage into an end-over-end spin, allowing the spacecraft to slowly fan out over time, negating the need for each spacecraft to have its own separation equipment. In the coming days and weeks, each 227-kilogram Starlink spacecraft will use its onboard krypton-ion propulsion system to raise its orbital altitude to about 550 kilometers. The Starlink satellite constellation is planned to grow to up to 12,000 satellites over the next 8 to 10 years. The goal is to provide high-speed, low-latency internet anywhere on the planet. Phase 1 is planned to include 1,600 spacecraft in 40 orbital planes at 550 kilometers. A second phase would see as many as 2,800 satellites at an altitude of around 1,150 kilometers. Finally, a third phase would include some 7,500 satellites at a very low Earth orbit of only 340 kilometers. Just 2 months ago, Vice President Mike Pence challenged NASA to return humans to the lunar surface by 2024. Since then, the agency has been working at breakneck speed to begin initial studies for various hardware items, including human-rated moon landers and gateway elements. On May 23rd, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine announced Maxar Technologies, formerly SSL, was selected to develop and build the first piece of the Lunar Gateway, the power and propulsion element. Maxar's power and propulsion element design is expected to be based on its SSL 1300 satellite platform and include a 50 kilowatt class solar electric propulsion system. It's designed to provide power, propulsion, and communications for the Gateway for at least 15 years. The maximum total value of the Maxar contract is $375 million and calls for the development, construction, and launch via a commercial rocket by 2022. Following a 12-month flight demonstration, NASA has the option to acquire the element. It's not all good news this week, as China's Long March 4C rocket failed to reach orbit to place a secretive military reconnaissance satellite into space. The 46-meter-tall 3-stage rocket took off at about 22:49 UTC May 22nd from the Taiyuan Satellite Space Center located southwest of Beijing. However, various Chinese social media posts indicated that the mission didn't go as planned. Additionally, China didn't announce the launch was successful, as it normally does shortly after a successfully completed mission. It would be about a day later before state-run news agencies confirmed the launch indeed had been a failure sometime during the flight of the rocket's third stage. Back on the ground, Virgin Orbit announced May 21st that it successfully completed a full mission duty cycle hot fire test on the first stage of its orbital class booster. Launcher 1, as it's called, is a small rocket designed to fly underneath a modified Boeing 747 named Cosmic Girl. An operational flight is expected to see the 2-stage rocket dropped at an altitude of about 11,000 meters and begin a launch profile into low Earth orbit. The rocket system is designed to orbit payloads up to 300 kilograms into a 500-kilometer sun-synchronous orbit, for a cost expected to be less than $12 million. According to Virgin Orbit, the test took place at the company's test site in Mojave, California, and lasted for over 3 minutes using equipment the company plans to use on an actual orbital flight later this year. Meanwhile, NASA's Mars 2020 rover continues to make progress in advance of its expected summer 2020 launch. Most recently, the fully assembled spacecraft that will send the rover to Mars, the cruise stage, aeroshell, and heat shield, underwent acoustic and thermal vacuum testing at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. This test ensures the spacecraft will be able to handle a vacuum at extreme temperatures of space, as well as the sound and vibrations of launch. According to NASA, the stack was tested and inspected 6 times before being transported back to the High Bay 1 cleanroom at the spacecraft assembly facility. Nearby, technicians are continuing work on the car-sized rover itself. NASA said more than 90% of the interior components are installed, including science instruments, computers, and electrical boxes. Following launch, the spacecraft is expected to take 6 months to get to Mars before landing at Jezero Crater on February 18, 2021. If you want to be part of that mission, you can. Well, at least your name. NASA is giving the public a chance to have their names stenciled on dime-sized chips via an electron beam. Each chip can hold more than 1 million names. As of this video, nearly 4.5 million names have been submitted. If you want to send your name to Mars, you can click right here or in the description below. You have until September 30th to add your name and get a souvenir boarding pass, like this. And those are your space bulletins for this week. As always, you can find these and the latest space stories at spaceflightinsider.com. There won't be a space bulletin next week, as I'll be viewing a hot fire test of the first stage of Northrop Grumman's new Omega rocket. You can expect to see content related to that soon. For now, be sure to subscribe to Spaceflight Insider if you haven't already, and hit that bell to be notified when more space-related content is uploaded. I'll see you in 2 weeks.